Becoming Led Zeppelin 2025. First film on my list that has 2025 in the year. This is a documentary that's based on how the Yardbirds got into becoming one of the amazing groups of the 1970s. The Yardbirds were around in the mid-60s, or maybe even slightly earlier, about 1963, but in 66, 67, things started to change because band members left, and then there was disputes over musical rights over particular songs. Cease and desist letters, I don't know whether that was covered in this film. However, what was covered was how the band was already experimenting, and they'd gone through the flower power of the Summer of Love of 1967. And in 1968, there was a huge amount happening in the world. There's a sort of newsreel that's shown during the point where Led Zeppelin came into being. They did a tour. They went to Scandinavia to continue a tour, went to Denmark, 7th of September 1968. They were forced to change their name, and they didn't even like the name Led Zeppelin that much. I think it's such a cool name, but of course back then I suppose anything unfamiliar doesn't sound like, oh, what is this new name? I guess they couldn't think of something more appropriate or that would work better. So the rest is history as such. But there's a lot in this documentary that I found so amazing. Like, they had this gig at the Roundhouse in Camden, not far away, Camden Town, Chalk Farm, place I'm familiar with. But the audience who came to see this group, they looked totally unimpressed and zombie-like, or just listening, but perhaps bemused. I don't know. It's sometimes hard to tell from facial expressions whether people just so in the zone listening. But there were like kids with fingers in their ears, there were families, parents with young children, and listening to this hard rock. Some of them had taken it in, trying to take it in, but it seemed that they didn't like it. It reminded me a bit of a scene from Back to the Future where Marty plays Jimi Hendrix style riffs to a 1955 audience. They're like, what? That's a similar thing that happens in this film. It feels, but this is documentary, it's like the footage, and there's so much brilliant footage of the gigs. They went to the USA, and America absolutely lapped it up. They were much more ready, it seemed, to receive Led Zeppelin than Britain right at the start, although soon after, by 1969, the right audience were here. After seeing recently the A Complete Unknown, and the Newport Festival comes up, I mean, it comes up again here, and it seems to have changed during the 60s, during the course of that decade. It's so much more the type of rock festivals that I remember going to, like Castle Donington. I mean, that was much later when I was a teenager, but it was already like that right at the end of the 60s. And things changed enormously in the 60s very quickly. Led Zeppelin were recording one album, then another. They got on to Led Zeppelin 2, 1969. And that, I guess, is described as the first album of heavy metal. Yeah, I can see that. I'm more familiar with the new wave of British heavy metal from the late 70s and early 80s. Iron Maiden, Saxon, Whitesnake, and various groups. But Led Zeppelin, they were a force from the late 60s all the way through the 70s, and they came to an abrupt end, of course. In 1980, there was the tragic death of John Bonham on 25th September, accidental death by drinking an awful lot. And so, of course, there was that tragedy. But one thing about this documentary is it shows photos of John and a lot of audio clips. There were very few interviews. It explains that very few interviews of John Bonham this documentary has, so he feels a large part of this documentary. And that the whole thing, it really feels like going back to that time over 50 years ago, 56, 57 years ago now, and going along for the process. It's interviews with Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, and oh gosh, the whole thing, it's great in this because you hear the music through the speakers blasting out, like I felt in some of the other music related films I've seen recently. It is like being there, not quite, but almost the nearest thing, and I absolutely love that. We're being treated to a lot of great films at the moment, in Piece by Piece, Complete Unknown, and the Robbie Williams film, absolutely amazing. In Britain, they did get huge audiences. They got to play the festivals here, and this film goes through those early years up until 1970, and that's it. So it only covers that early part of Led Zeppelin. That goes with the name, becoming Led Zeppelin. Those were those early days. It's exactly as the title describes. But they were so disliked by the press. I mean, they wrote some awful stuff. I mean, the press, it just feels like the press can say and do what they want, where they obviously can, and it is opinions. The opinions are just... It's just like I feel when I see what I saw written, the excerpts, they've just picked out words from a dictionary and strung them together, disparaging words about them. But that's because I like the music anyway. I've listened to Led Zeppelin for so many years and I've loved it. And so I find it very strange to see people being so uncomplimentary towards them. It didn't appeal to them, but what they say boggled my mind. I couldn't really understand it. I found it exhilarating. I thought it was really stunning. And all that riff work, all the screaming vocals, the amazing drumming and the bass playing. And it all came together in such an amazing, complete package. They're brilliant, I think. And I hope there's other documentaries still to be made about their progress through the 70s, because Stairway to Heaven and all their other stuff. But it really was fascinating seeing this early material, the way they took the USA by storm, seeing the huge audiences out there just really enjoying it, they're musical geniuses. Because this is a documentary, I might score it slightly lower than all the long run of 9s I've given. I think I will give this 8.25, and it's simply because documentaries, they are interesting, but I really like the drama of fictionalized accounts. I've seen quite a lot of documentaries over the years, and they can be great. They're a treat in their own way, and seeing large tracks of the performances is an amazing treat. And in a way, I feel like, oh, I should score it higher. But because documentaries don't have that added creative input of a drama, I think it reduces the score slightly. But it's still absolutely brilliant, I think. I think it's a really worthwhile film to see. I've got friends who won't see documentaries, or at least not in the cinema, and I think, oh no, it's a documentary, what's the point? But this is very worthwhile, simply because it is music. It held my attention so well. I'd love to know what you think. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing if you do. Please like if you like this review. Please hit the notification button. And I hope to see you again soon. Thank you. Bye for now.